Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar. Good to have you all here with me. I will give colleagues a few moments to join. We are expecting quite a large number of people today. If this is your first time joining us on Bravery in the Boardroom, you are most welcome. We do have the chat. I'm going to guide you through some housekeeping in a few moments, but while we're doing that, please feel free to drop your name and where you're joining from into the chat. It would be great to know who's here. And for those of you who don't know me, my name's Monique Carayol. I'm a leadership coach and consultant. I'm also the co-founder of Bravery in the Boardroom. I will be your host today. And my colleague Ruby, who you can see here on screen with me as well, will be supporting me. And as I said, if you've been with us before, you will know Ruby is part of the dream team as well. And we have my colleague Millie behind the scenes, who will be moving the slides. So I'm just going to give people literally 30 seconds, and then we're going to kick off because we have a busy agenda. And if you know me, you'll know that I like to finish on time. Okay, so I'm going to set myself that target of finishing on time today as well. Shall we click to the next slide, please? Welcome, Esther. It's good to see you. So, thank you. So just to let people know, this is a full webinar format. So you, as the audience, you won't be able to come off mute or come on camera. What you'll be able to see, and you should be able to see now, is our slides in the middle and myself and Ruby on the side, okay? When the panel joins us, you'll be able to see them too, but you won't be able to see yourselves as you do usually on a Zoom meeting. So I know sometimes people join these and think something's gone wrong. I'm not coming up on camera, but that's why it's a full webinar format. The session is being recorded, so please enable your audio if you're prompted so you can hear us. It's great to see you, Maxine, Jacob, all people are really good to see you here. Interact with us via the chat. Those of you who've been here before know that we encourage that, and you're most welcome, Steph. Good afternoon. And the Q&A. So when we are going to have time for questions from the audience for myself, Ruby, and our panel. If you can put them into the Q&A, it really helps us in terms of being able to find them quickly for you and to put them in when we come to the Q&A section. And if you're not already, please follow us on social media. We are on Twitter at Bravery ITB, and we're also on LinkedIn at Bravery in the Boardroom. And I know a number of you, thank you. Thank you for your support that you are following us. Can I go to the next slide, please? Hi, Jane. I want to speak with you, Jane. I mentioned your name to a colleague, and I hope she's on the call today, speaking about your role. Please remind me, I don't want to forget. Welcome back, Kevin. I remember you joined us last time as well. So our agenda today, I want to give some context just to set. So I'm there whizzing away, aren't I? Today is the Northwest Region Bravery in the Boardroom session. This is our 6th webinar, I believe, and we try to invite colleagues, senior leaders who are working or who have very recently worked in the region that we're talking about. So whilst everybody's welcome to attend, today's focus is the Northwest region. So I will be sharing a few stats from the res to give some context on that. I also want to share a short clip from an interview that I held recently with some board members from Coventry and Warwickshire Partnership Trust, because I think their chair, Jagtar Singh, really encapsulated what the power of diverse boardrooms are. A lot of us here will know that already, but we also have colleagues who say to me, I don't know how, I'm challenged on that. I've got colleagues who, don't see the importance of it, don't see the relevance of it. The main reason we set up and why I co-founded Bravery in the Boardroom is because I am determined, and I don't use that word lightly, I am determined to see boardrooms more representative of the communities and staff they serve. And actually, when we see the power of diverse boardrooms and what Jagtar shares about his board and what has happened, I think he encapsulates it, and I encourage you, we can give you this clip. You can share this clip with colleagues and anyone who you're speaking to says they don't realize or understand why we need to have more diverse boardrooms. So as I mentioned, we'll have our main panel discussion, we'll have the Q&A. I'll also try my best to summarize, and you'll have a takeaway action. And then at the end, we'll share about our new podcast and also our new website. I've picked up a message from Millie, and she said that for everyone, can you please have a look at your chat and make sure your replies are going to everyone and not just the panelists, unless you specifically only want to speak to the panelists. Okay? Okay, shall we click on Millie? Okay, so as I mentioned, the RES. For the colleagues who are not familiar with the RES, we have colleagues from outside the NHS joining us today as well. This is the Workforce Race Equality Standard and the 2022 key headlines that relate to what I'm speaking about, particularly about representation of race in the boardroom. 24% of staff in the NHS, and I use the term BME background because that's the terminology used in the report. So just under a quarter of staff in the NHS are from a BME background. This has gone up slightly from 2021. 13%, so we know this. We don't see the appropriate representation at board level for people from a BME background. This has gone up slightly as well over the last year, but still way below the staff representation percentage. And if we look at executive board members, so some of you may recall from previous sessions that I've mentioned about we've seen a big push and rise in more ethnic diversity in non-executive members, board members, but we're not seeing the same pace of change for executive board members. And this is why I pulled this figure out in particular, so we keep our focus and context there. And in all regions, so all 7 NHS regions, there's a lower proportion of BME people on boards compared to the proportion of staff. Today, I have a panel of senior clinical leaders from the Northwest region, and I particularly, and I know Ruby will say more about this later as well, but I particularly wanted to pull up and say, you know, we know NHS clinical workforce is the majority of the NHS workforce, but we also know that we have a large representation of ethnically diverse colleagues at band 5, so you know that level, and we see it completely drop off when we go band 6 and above. So that bullet point there, the race disparity ratios are higher, reflecting greater inequality in clinical staff roles. And absolutely, look, Maxine is there telling us as well about one person of 42 ICB boards. Welcome, Antoinette, it's good to see you. So let me just click on, thank you, Millie, if we could click on one more, and just bring this to the Northwest region. So 14.8%, just under 15% of staff in the NHS in the Northwest region are from a BME background. Just over 10% of board members are from a BME background, and 6.8% of execs are from a BME background. So when we talk about progression, when we talk about seeing representation in this region in particular, it is very likely that when you progress to an 8B or C or above, you are going to be the only one. You're absolutely going to be the only one. And I speak about that because if you've heard me speak, you'll hear me mention about how do we support colleagues to be in a state of readiness to lead at senior level when you may be the only one. You may be the only one for a while, and you may be stepping into an environment that isn't inclusive yet and isn't welcoming and is quite oppressive. These are honest things that we need to talk about, because I think we have a challenge of increasing diverse talent pipelines. We also have a challenge of sustaining senior diverse colleagues in senior roles. And I don't want us to forget that, okay? Okay, can I move us on? So Millie, I think my next slide is, so I mentioned that I had a recent interview with Jagtar Singh, the chair, Mel Coombs, the CEO, and Bao Clare, one of the non-executive directors at Coventry and Warwickshire Partnership Trust. And I wanted to speak with them because this is Bravery in the Boardroom, but I like to talk about inaction. So what's happening, what's changing. And Coventry and Warwickshire Partnership Trust were recognised just over a year ago by NHS England for some of their RES indicator performances. And I wanted to understand more about what they were doing and what difference they'd seen by having a diverse board, diverse leadership, and really tackling discrimination, racism, and inequality. So I'd like to just play this 2-minute clip. We can't hear it, Millie. I know we could hear it before. Want to try again? Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bravery in the Boardroom in Action. So today I am joined with board members from Coventry and Warwickshire Partnership Trust.
So you're correct in saying that Coventry Warwick Partnership Trust is one of the most diverse boards in the country. And that's not come by chance. That's come because we've recognised the pool of talent out there sits with all communities and with all groups with protected characteristics. Having a diverse board means there's diversity of thought, diversity of thinking, diversity of lived experience, which then influences our policies and our strategies. So a diverse board is able to deliver a clear business case of delivering its objectives and delivering its business, which in our industry, in our means, we save lives. So we're able to save more lives by a clear focus and understanding of our community and understanding of our staff, which then enables us to continue to recruit more diversity because people see us as a good place to live. Equality, diversity, and inclusion is everybody's business. It's a percentage of my business, it's a percentage of Mel's business, it's a percentage of board business, middle managers. So in real terms, the resource cannot be measured because it is our day job to ensure that we meet the needs of our communities, we reduce the health inequalities that they suffer, we allocate resources in a way in which meets our strategy, in a way in which we also look after our workforce to ensure that they feel valued at work. And anybody who thinks that equality and diversity sits and rests with just the equality and diversity officer and maybe an admin officer to support them and another 3 people to deliver training have got the wrong end of this. This is a leadership responsibility. It's everybody's responsibility. It's our core job. Understanding equality, diversity means you're a more efficient, more effective organisation, and you focus on your core objectives. It isn't having an equality, diversity officer to blame when things go wrong.
Thank you, Millie. If you could take the slides down for me. So I don't think I've got anything to add to that in terms of what Jagtar shares there. And as I said, we will, sorry, Millie, I think I'm putting you on the spot because I don't know if I remember to share the link with you, but we absolutely will get this link out with the follow-on email. It is on our YouTube channel as well. But I think, you know, I encourage everyone to use that. Like I said, use that clip if you need to. And quote and reference what Jagtar says there, because as I said, there's nothing I disagree with. So what I would like to do now is move us into the main part of today, which is our panel discussion. So I would like to welcome my panel guests. So I'd like to encourage Tabetha and Trish, if you can come off mute and come on camera. Welcome today. And I'll just explain to everyone before I ask Tabetha and Trish to introduce themselves, just to also let you know that Rizwan Malik will also be joining us on the panel. He's just been delayed, but as soon as he gets here, he will come into the conversation as well, but we will kick off. So I will go to my left first and say, good afternoon, Trish. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, good afternoon and welcome everybody, and lovely to see such a great response to this webinar. For those that you don't know me, I'm commonly known, I'm Patricia, but I'm commonly known as Trish Hughes, and former Director of Nursing and covering Northern Care Alliance, the Rochdale Care Organisation part. I have worked in a number of senior roles at many organisations and moved in my career because I've sort of taken opportunities and taken risks to get where I am now. Yeah, and it's really, I'm really excited to sort of get started and look forward to the questions. But yeah, well, big welcome everybody.
Thank you, Trish. Thank you. And good afternoon, Tabetha.
Good afternoon, Monique. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tabetha Darmon. And a bit like Trish, I have been around the UK a bit just to get me to where I am. Currently, I'm the Chief Nursing Officer for Morecambe Bay, but I've worked most of my life in Derbyshire Healthcare, which is the mental health trust. I've worked in Nottinghamshire Healthcare as well, which is the mental health and community trust. And I've landed myself a chief nursing officer role within an acute trust in Morecambe Bay. So thank you and glad to see everybody. Thank you.
And congratulations, Tabetha, as well, because I think I can still just about say that you're still fairly new in post. So congratulations to you.
My
I know.
third month, Monique. Thank you.
Yeah, see, I'm gonna be probing you. You know I am, right? Okay. So I know, and it's lovely to see. Thank you, everyone. People offering their congratulations and colleagues who know you as well. Look, Rizwan is here. Rizwan, like magic, I think you have just come in just in time. We've literally just introduced ourselves. So if you are settled, please come off mute and put your camera on. We are ready, literally bang on the money, Rizwan, for you to introduce yourself.
Nothing like making an entrance. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Rizwan Malik. I'm a radiologist. I work at the Royal Bolton Hospital. Until the start of this year, I was the Divisional Medical Director for Diagnostics within the NHS. I have since then, and previously I was also the clinical lead for Greater Manchester. We had a rather elongated patch procurement, and I led on that. I have, after 11 years of medical leadership roles, stepped away, so I'm still a practicing NHS consultant radiologist, but I've taken my leadership roles into the commercial and private sector.
Thank you, Rizwan. And you know, I'm gonna probe more of that out of you as well, because the conversations me and you've had prior to here, I was like, I'd love that to come out in what we're talking about on the panel. So I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to jump into the questions. So Trish, if I may come to you first, you touched on there that you've held quite a few leadership roles and you've taken risks. It would be really good for us to understand a little bit more about your journey into senior leadership and what helped you to get there.
Yeah, I think, you know, you do need that sort of sheer determination and ensure that you're not letting things get you down. You know, there is a lot of negative narrative around and you've got to be careful not to let that drag you down and don't lose your focus. I think really some of the key risks I took, I was working at Northampton General Hospital for many years, fantastic organisation, really done a lot to develop me. I took a risk I left the organisation to work at Luton and Dunstable because then I was going to get a higher band. And that was great experience for me. I did that for 2 years and then I came back to Northampton for many years. I was able to get an 8A interim role, absolutely fantastic. Then I took a risk. I applied for 8B roles in London. There was a 6 months fixed term contract, which I applied for. And interestingly, originally I didn't get the job, but this is the important thing of making sure you still go for that interview, because a couple of weeks later, the person they'd offered it to had turned it down and they offered it to me. It was a 6 months fixed term contract and I took the risk. It did get extended, but that gave me an 8B role in London. And I probably didn't look back after that time. So I think that is, you know, that's an area where you do need to take that risk, and that gave me that sort of platform to apply for senior roles in London. But I can talk about that a bit more later because I know we've got a set time to just talk that through. Yeah.
No problem at all, no problem. And just from what you shared there, in terms of, I know you said about taking risks, but in terms of, so you've got us to where you've got to an 8B and kind of springboarding from there. Was there anything in particular that helped you to get there?
I know it's a difficult one, isn't it? I think for me, I've tried to stay positive and not think it's necessarily my race that's holding me back, because I think it's that balance, and we know it does have an impact. But the thing is, when we get lost in that and you can't see the wood for the trees, so you have to really keep positive, think, right, okay, yeah, I didn't get that job, but I'm going to go again. And you do end up applying for lots of jobs. So what I will say to people is it is experience and it's networking. Yes, it can be hard when you're turned down many times, but I think it's that find within yourself that sort of sheer determination and will. And don't forget as well, particularly for women of colour, that, you know, being that role model. because I know as I've progressed my career, I've got lots of people I'm still in contact, and people will come to me or message me and say, Trish, you know, you inspire me. I can see that you've done it, so I'm going to do it. So don't forget about being the inspiration for your other fellow women of colour, where we know it can be very difficult for them. So I always see myself as having a dual role about climbing that professional ladder, but also how can I support others by that being that role model and mentoring and support. But hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about that later.
Yeah, thank you, Tris. And Tabetha, if I come to you and say you touched on the organizations that you've worked with in your career and then stepping into acute, but to ask you that same question, especially when you were at Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire, was there anything in particular that helped you on that journey and progressing?
Thank you, Monique. It's been a long journey. You can look at my gray hairs to show that it's been a very long, challenging journey to get to where I am. So for me to get to where I am now, I worked for Derbyshire Healthcare for 23 years, and I found myself stuck at kind of an 8A level. And I thought, after 23 years, you know, what else do I do? I didn't have a clue about mentorship, coaching, support. So I was very brave, and I approached the chief executive officer, who's the chief exec now in North Healthcare. At the time, he was the COO, chief operating officer. And I said, how does a Black woman get above an 8A? Because I think I've had enough of this level. That's when he opened my eyes and said, actually, have you got a coach? What's one of them? Have you got a mentor? What's one of those? So that's one thing that's sometimes kept away from most of us BMEs. We don't have a coach, you don't have a mentor, you don't have direction. Nobody gives you that information. It's very easily given to others, but we don't get it readily unless you ask for it. So I decided to step out of Derbyshire and decided to take a risk like Trish. I went on the interim, you know, started picking interim roles, but I only did it for 10 months and I went to Black Country. So from 8A, I jumped to an 8C as the assistant director for nursing and safeguarding. So it had to take that jump and to take the risk of jumping. So from that 8C, that's when I started progressing into deputy directors of nursing, deputy director. Again, at that level, you get stuck. So the support I got to get here, please, anybody, you need a coach, you need a mentor, you need networks. Information does not readily flow to BAME staff. It's kept somewhere. I don't know where that is. So my mission is anybody who looks like me, I will share what I know. I will mentor, I will coach, and that ladder that I used to climb up, I'm not taking it off. I want everybody else to climb up that ladder and to get to where I am, because it took me years. I'm about to retire, and I want young people to get here before they get to my age. So mentorship, coaching, networks, very helpful.
Yes. Thank you, Tabetha. And just to say, I must say as well, when I approached all of you to come onto the panel, there wasn't a moment of hesitation. And all of you, and I've spoken with you, you know, your passion, your desire, and your commitment to help others, to lift as you climb, to, you know, to remove the barriers that you've faced. All three of you said that so powerfully to me when you said, yes, Monique, I will come on here, no problem. And I really appreciate that. As much as we have conversations where people say, you know, you must lift as you climb, you must hold the ladder out. Actually, people doing it from their heart and having the passion and desire that you all have to do that. You know, I can't thank you enough personally. You know, I can't thank you enough personally. So thank you for sharing so honestly, Tabetha. And Rizwan, if I come to you, because you touched on it, you've had a long-standing career in clinical and medical leadership. It would be great to hear a bit more from you about how you progressed into that and what helped you on the way.
So thank you. If you don't mind, can I come in on the very last point that Tabetha's just made? And I know I'm going to be a little bit around the houses, but I think that's really important. I completely agree with you. Mentorship coaches, these were always seen as effects and tools for other people, right? And let's call a spade. These were tools for the middle and upper middle class white executive folk, not really for aspirant leaders, not really for people of color, not really for any form of minority. And part of the struggle there is, if you want the true benefits of a mentor or a coach, they need to understand what are the things that, what are your demons? What are the things you struggle with? What are the self-imposed prisons that you put around yourself? Because if they don't understand those, how on earth are they going to advise you around them? So I was offered a coach by my workplace. This was 10 years into my career in a leadership role. It was 2 years into my being a divisional medical director. And I'd say that not out of any saltiness, but the fact that someone thought enough of me to offer it. But I was mindful of, hang on, coaching, that's the sort of stuff Gwyneth Paltrow does. What on earth am I going to waste my time doing that kind of stuff? No, we insist you have one. Well, all right, if you insist I have one, then I want a coach who I can at least share these things with, who understands my struggles. And guess what? There wasn't any on the staff or on the books for our trust. So I had to go out and find one who I thought would be appropriate to work with me. I did, and I think he's absolutely fantastic. And I've learned a lot from those sessions. And I think that's part of it. If we do want to promote our minority staff, we have to put the structures in place to challenge them, to push them, to support them in the appropriate manner, which and just by ticking a box, it doesn't work. And again, it's something Trish touched on earlier, which is, so why am I here? I'm not here to, I know some of the things which I say might sound a bit salty. It's not to grind an axe. It's basically to say, I didn't really think all this stuff was for me. I fought quite hard to get where I got to. And I think it's really important to share both the kind of things I did to get to where I am, and also it's very important to not to be seen to pull the ladder up, because we unfortunately do see far too much of that. You get to a certain stage and it's, I'm all right, Jack. And you daren't take risks. You daren't speak out after a certain level because you want to progress higher up. And that clearly is inappropriate as well, because that then means that everyone is stuck in Groundhog Day. Everyone has to meet the same challenges, the same issues that we've encountered in our careers. And what is the point of that? So when I became clinical lead in my trust, we had a department where it was pretty much part of the course that the next clinical lead would be the next most senior consultant along the chain. I'd been a consultant for, how's it, about 4 years by that stage. I clearly had a reputation of being a gobby so-and-so. I wasn't shy to speak my mind. And that's part of the crux. You know, I wasn't someone who's prepared to sit on the sidelines when I saw things that were wrong. And so our trust went into turnaround. Not surprisingly, none of my colleagues were very keen to step into the leadership role because, surprise, surprise, diagnostics and radiology were always one of the trouble points, and you know, it was always thus. And so I got approached by the head of the division at that point to say, look, not just because everyone else has said no, I've spoken to your colleagues, we'd like that you think a little bit differently. Would you consider doing it? And for me, it was, honestly, it sounds a bit cold and analytical, but it was fairly straightforward. Up to this point, I was obsessed with proving to the world that I'm good enough, despite my background, despite being a Pakistani son of a working class bus driver. The old cliches, I lived them, right? And you get so wrapped up in trying to prove despite yourself that you do sometimes, I think, forget these aspects. And you know, our culture, our race, it's very much an integral part of how we behave and what we are. And so I thought quite clearly, well, do you know what? If I do this and I screw up, well, we're in turnaround and I've only been a consultant for 2 minutes, so that's all right. And if I do something of it, if I can make a fist of it, then perhaps that will mark well. I did it. I thoroughly enjoyed the role. I enjoyed the opportunity. I embraced it, and I was asked to stay on. But even during that time, what were some of the issues that I then became more aware of during it? Some of it was that I caught myself once in a conversation saying, I felt lucky not to have encountered any significant racial discrimination. And afterwards I reflected, what a daft thing to say, to felt lucky to have not encountered something which it should be part of the course we're not doing. I worked in, I still work in a hospital which has, you know, a huge ethnic minority background. And yet I remember going home one weekend because there was nothing for me to eat in the canteen on a Sunday. You know, there was beef, something or other, and there were pork chops, which the entire Muslim and Hindu populace couldn't have partaken of. And like every sort of executive or leadership meeting, Fridays were always the best day to have these sort of meetings. And I always had a choice of either I can have lunch when everybody else did, or I can go and find the nearest mosque and actually do the obligatory part of my faith, which was to jump out and find a mosque. And actually, it's taken, well, I've been a consultant for 16 years. Last year, our hospital introduced mandatory blocking of time to not have meetings during this period. 16 years of me trying to talk about it. And why that came about was we had a divisional medical meeting, which we'd invited our chief executive to. She said she couldn't make it on the Thursday morning, and so the meeting was moved to a Friday lunchtime, to which I said, fair enough, I'll give my apologies. And it was, hang on, you can't give your apologies, you chair this meeting. And I had to explain again why I couldn't join a meeting at lunchtime on a Friday. And fair dues to CEO, she thought that was unacceptable and issued a moratorium. But there was always a hoop jumping exercise. And I guess the point is, I have a thick enough skin and am bullish enough to sort of plow through this. The number of times I've spoken to other colleagues in IT staff, nursing staff, some of my colleagues, and it was, look, you're really talented. Why are you not applying for some of these roles? And it was, they're not for the likes of me, or I don't get access to the starting points for these things. So if I don't get access to the starting points, clearly they don't really want me to progress. And I think that's where we're missing out. It's not the, can you apply? And Patricia, I completely agree with you. It takes a lot of guts to apply for a role thinking you're not going to get it. It really does. And when you don't, you always keep wondering, is it because I'm not good enough, or are there any other factors? And most of the time, you just convince yourself, I didn't get it because I wasn't good enough, which frankly isn't true most of the time. There are other factors at play. But when you've plucked up the courage to do this, and then you fall at the first hurdle, who's going to try again and be knocked down again and again? I applaud you for that. I really do. And so that's pretty much why I'm here, really, to help share what kind of stuff did I do? How did I navigate some of the landscape? And hopefully just to say, do you know what? I'm just a regular bloke which came from a normal background. And if I can do it, there's nothing special about me. What can I do to support you? And maybe what can you learn from what I did to also take talent right to where it should?
Yes, Rizwan, and you are brave. You are brave. You embody brave leadership in what you shared there, and having the courage to, because you may not see it as courage, but we know that it is, and we'll see that from what people will share in the chat here and what you said there. Like, so powerful, so powerful. Thank you. Tabetha, I know you had your hand up, so before I come to the next question, should I come back to you?
I'm sorry, I know we
That's
limited
all right.
time. I just wanted to come back to the mentorship and coaching, because I suppose what I missed out in that is the fact that within the mentorship and coaching, the thing that worked for me was sponsorship. Because I agree with Rizwan, just mentor and coaching, sometimes it's just a name and it's a tick box and everything. But what actually you find from your networks is the sponsorship. And I think that's what I outlined about. I don't take the ladder off, because it's that sponsorship, supporting people and mentoring them to basically do their CV, their supporting statement right, to get into that interview room. That's what I'm talking about. And I got that through Black Leadership Network, through NHS, being supported by people who look like me, actually hearing my problems, where I'm coming from. And now I have a saying where I say, you fall 7 times and you get up the 8th. Meaning you go for, I don't know how many interviews that you fall, but don't give up, because the 8th or 9th time you get up. So I just wanted to outline that there is a difference between mentor coaching and actually being sponsored. Sponsorship is actually very powerful.
Yes, very true. And I think sponsorship is being spoken about more recently, isn't it? About that enabler as a development tool. When we see here about sponsorship is key, and it is, and mentorship is key. And it's one of the core reasons why we have Bravery in the Boardroom, because the likes of Trish, Tabetha and Rizwan, we don't have enough of you. We know that, right? We haven't got enough of you. And you're all very busy. So being able to try and provide space where we have a number, we've got over 70 people on the call today who can hear from you. This, what you share in here is like magic. And it is like that actual sponsorship and that mentorship. It can unlock what gets shared here. I know from what other colleagues who've attended our previous sessions, I say this unlocks things for people. This really helps people to move forward or to understand some of what is that almost like hidden, isn't it? Nobody gives you that tap on the shoulder. Here, what I'm trying to say is our panel's tapping every single one of you in the audience on the shoulder today and choosing to share their insights. But Rizwan, I can see your hand up, so I want to come back to you before I go to the next question.
Thank you. Sorry, I'll try not to monopolize. I think we got so someone just said something in the chat which probably nicely encapsulates what I want to say. And it's sometimes you find you have ideas and others don't give you the opportunity to share your knowledge and skills. And again, it goes to the heart of taking the risk of applying or putting yourself forward. I had a couple of scenarios where I'd been to some AGMs, been to conferences and boards, and you sat around the table and someone said to me, they were from NHS something or other, we really need someone like you to join and step up. I went, great. You know, I felt really proud of myself. You know, you think, shared my contact details, that email, that call will come any day now. It's fine. It went by and I thought, all right, so maybe I'm not quite as good as I thought I was. Then 6 months, 9 months later, you're at another conference, or you're not the lead, and you're sat around another table, and someone else in the same group and says, we really need people like you, Rizwan, to join into, you know, to come to Central to give that perspective. And again, the same thing happened, and I didn't really voice very much. The third time it happened, and I basically figured this is just a talking shop, and I perhaps was a little bit hangry at the time, had not had my caffeine, which is why I'm drinking it now. And when someone said the same thing again, I just said, can I just ask something? They went, what? I said, you keep saying someone like me. What's wrong with me? And they went, I beg your pardon. I said, well, this is the third time one of your department has talked about someone like me. And clearly I'm not good enough because I never get that call which goes forward. What is it about me that isn't right for your province? You know, you try not to push too far. Is it because I'm from the north and you're in like southerners? Is there anything else about me that you don't get? You know, lots of shifty glances, lots of nervous. And so that for me was a tipping point as well, which was, well, clearly I think I'm good enough and others think I'm good enough, but only so far. So then I'll try and do it my way then. And that led to me pursuing a portfolio career, to deciding, you know what, I'm just going to showcase what I do in my own way. And if that helps people, great. If that gets me anywhere, great. But I'll enjoy myself doing it rather than just being sat back and then being accused of not putting myself forward and not being there to actually take the falls.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. I think there's a really powerful point you raised in there about actually you knowing, because I think that's the other thing as well. You have confidence in what you brought to the table and saying, actually, I can bring my expertise into other places. And I know that you're a clinical director in private healthcare as well. And I know you colleagues here to know that as well. You've got talent, you know, and if that door isn't opening, you can try another one and have the confidence to do that too. Such a powerful point there. So you've all shared with me as well. You've kind of answered my next question about some of those challenges that you face. Trish, I want to come to you because I know from our conversations offline, you use a lot of your experience and influence to help tackle inequality. So it'd be great to hear a little bit more from you about how you do that and the support you choose to offer to colleagues.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question, and linked with, so I know I saw somebody put a detailed question in the chat about how you stay, you know, how you know, as you rise, how do you stay true to yourself and to your values? I think some of that for me is getting older. I'm 51 now. Luckily to have dark skin that I've aged well, but I think some of that is that maturity of character and not having to sort of prove yourself. I think, you know, when you do get to, you know, I have got to that director level, and it really is, and what's really important for me is for me to be the voice for all of you, my people of colour, and also for our communities are often seldom heard. They are not listened to. So when I feel, you know, if I'm in a, you know, if I need to speak out at a regional meeting, a national meeting, and if I never feel afraid, because I think if I don't say it, who is going to say it? So that's what drives me. You drive me to do what I do and to where I've got to. And I think so. To give a really, you know, to give a sort of an example of how I've supported inequalities. At Rochdale, I was there for 6 months, so covering Northern Care Alliance, executive director nursing, covering Rochdale. And the first thing I did within a few weeks was make sure I was out in the community with a lovely colleague of mine that was part of the BAME network and a real champion for inequalities. We went out to meet some of the community, the Nigerian Association, and one of our South Asian communities charities, and also managed to speak to some of the Arab communities and listening to see what the issues were for them. And some of the key issues they talked about was struggling to get access to a GP. So that with that, I came back and I spoke to our execs about, you know, these are the issues, these are the challenges, and also be very clever in terms of actually, so if they're not getting access to a GP, if they've got a problem, they're landing up in A&E. We've got an A&E target that they are impacting on urgent and emergency care pressures. So I think when you're having those conversations, when you need, and you're being true to yourself, it's listening to your communities and it's making sure that voice is heard. And it's how you link it with what, you know, with some of the organizational objectives. And what you'll find, everybody, all of your organizational objectives, there should be something around EDI. Both for your patients as a public sector equality duties, there's legal responsibilities about what they should be doing, and we need to challenge. So from a staff's perspective, and I know there's a few of you on the call, basically from the last 20 years when I started to rise, I've always mentored and supported predominantly women of colour, but not exclusively, men as well, men of colour as well. And again, like Tabetha said, that I feel that is my responsibility on how I empower you, how I am your sponsor, how I am that support for you, and people will reach out to me, and I will always readily help and signpost. And that's an important thing for me to do. So I think there is something you need to stay true to yourself and to your values, and do not be afraid. And the thing is, you know you are doing good. I know I'm doing good. And I think over the years now, I've been in the NHS 30 years, I've got such a network of people across who I know are speaking my name when I'm not in the room and saying about my reputation. So I don't need to prove myself to anybody, because everybody on this call, everybody on Twitter and LinkedIn, you do that for me because you know I've reached or touched, I've helped somebody. So I think that's, be true to yourself and don't be afraid of doing that. And obviously, you know, you've got our details if we can help. Hopefully that's helpful.
No, of course it is, Trish. Very, very, very helpful. And as I said, I thanked you before, but I know we will also share the panelists' Twitter handles and social media handles as well for people to be able to get in touch. But do suck up what you can here, right, today. And we will, this is being recorded. So again, people will be able to share this with colleagues, but also come back to it, not expecting you to retain everything we hear now. So I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to come to Tabetha. A question for you, Tabetha, because at the start, I congratulated you on your 3 months in the boardroom, Chief Nursing Officer at Morecambe Bay Hospitals. It would be great for you to share some insights with us. I know that you are in the minority in your boardroom. What does that really feel like at boardroom level?
You've already touched on it, Monique, because it's very, very lonely. But something I've actually picked from Trish when she was talking is about not being afraid, feeling comfortable in your seat, because the fact of the matter, you are a lone voice, because like you say, you are in the minority. So when it comes to decision making, just picture it, you have got a decision to make around your patients, your communities, EDI. It takes a lot for people to buy into what you're saying. So the first thing is remain true to yourself, to your values, what you believe in. Be comfortable in your role and what you're doing and what you want to deliver. Just be yourself. Most of all, don't be afraid. I have spent all my life being afraid of people. You know, so we don't speak, you don't say anything because you're afraid of the consequences. And if we want to be honest, a lot of people who are either on this call or whatever live with that every day, being afraid to speak, because if I do, something will come back to me. I've been there, probably to a certain extent still there. But what helps is just having people around to talk to, having a Monique around there, having a Trish around there to pick up the phone and actually say, you know what, today is a bad day. What do I do? I'm struggling with one thing that I'll throw out there where we are all talking EDI. The thing that challenges is when you're talking about race. We're trying to deal with population health, health inequalities. Race data, you've shown us the figures. It's no surprise to any of us. But when you start saying, let's talk race, I've had so many questions about why is race the most important thing? Why are we all talking about race? Why is it nationally that is the anti-racism strategy, anti-racist this? I have to deal with that every day. Just be comfortable and don't be afraid. Is it easy? No, it's not. But it's knowing who to go to when it's really, really tough. That's what I'm saying, but it's not easy just to have your networks and people to offload is the only way I can say, and actually be comfortable in your seat.
Monique's mic's just gone off, so I'm going to step in, and I've got some of the questions already. So thank you for that, Tabetha. The next question is for Rizwan. And what I want to ask is, Rizwan, is what should be prioritized to increase senior diverse talent pipelines, particularly for clinical colleagues?
I think what should be prioritized in the first instance is access to the appropriate courses to equip you for these roles. And I don't mean all the highfalutin leadership, this, leadership, that, the simple stuff. I'll go back to an example of something someone said to me actually not too long ago, which still made me think that despite what I'd done and where I thought I was, it wasn't anywhere near high enough. So I got asked about 9 months ago, after a board interaction, which perhaps wasn't as ideal as it might have been. Afterwards, someone said, have you discussed with your coach how you speak? And it was one of those scenarios where by this stage, and again, Tabetha and Patricia, I can only echo with what you said before. You know, when you get to a stage where I think I don't need validation anymore. I think I've earned my seat at this table, so I will speak my mind. And clearly that was the heart of this conversation. And so I shot back, have you discussed with your coach how you listen? And that was the core of it. You know what, we get told that the structures are ready for us and we don't see color and we don't see this and we don't see that. And yet all the tropes exist. The angry black woman, the aggressive brown man. And this is what it was. So when the trust in turnaround, when we're in a global pandemic, it's all right for Rizwan to come along and save the day or to be me and, you know, fight fires. When we're in peacetime, then all those qualities, you know, I'm still rough around the edges, I'm uncouth, I cringe when I'm saying this, but I'm Cambridge educated. It's not as if I don't know how to speak within certain circles. I choose not to waste time spending time and effort modulating my tone and my words. I'd far rather interact in an authentic manner. And yet, still, this was an issue for people. And to be fair to that person, they came back to me a couple of days later and reflected on that conversation and said, they get what I'm saying now. So parts of it is to get things ready. The environments we're going into have to wake up and actually be ready to listen to not just look around and see different colored faces, to listen to different ways of presenting an argument. Otherwise, with that issue is going to exist. I can't control that. What I can control is perhaps making sure that I tick all the various boxes, and you aren't going to be handed those on a platter. So we had our trust thought they are a fairly enlightened place. They put on leadership for clinicians. Great, I applied. Rizwan, you really need to do this. except of course, one of the main criteria for them was a monthly debrief, which guess what, took place every Friday between 12 and 2. So the first year the course was put on, I said, what are you going to do about it? Well, we're doing nothing, mate. You can't join this because it's mandatory. Fine. I'd quite like to join next year, mistakenly assuming the next year they'd juggle stuff around. Cohort 2 started, and guess what? There was mandatory debriefs on a Friday, 1 and 2. So I thought, blow this for a lark. Can you just send me the list of topics that you think I should be knowing about as a clinical leader? And I used my study leave budget and my course fees. And you know what? I went on those courses and I learned from them. And again, sometimes you don't realize you need to learn these things because it's an entirely different language, this leadership exec language, to what you do from a day-to-day basis. And if you want to swim, you've got to learn how to handle some of these curveballs. So I did it myself. And then when it came back to it, I said, there you go, there's my CV. And I'm all right to apply for these things now. But that's where I go back to, conversations with more junior staff, non-clinical staff, IT staff. And when you speak to them, what they point out to you is, I'm never promoted or put forward to go to that course, which leads to these higher things. So it's not that I don't want to apply, but if I'm overlooked at the first or second step, then it tells me that people don't think I'm worthy. So what we need to open access to those courses to the junior nurses, which aren't just, courses for their mates at band 7 and band 8 going forward. You want your band 5s to go forward. And the same principle, it's all very well when we look at all these EDI figures about how many Black and ethnic minority people we've got. Fine. How many of you got at band 8, band 9? How many medical directors or clinical directors have you got which come from minorities? Those are the figures that count, not the ones that you want to reflect on ticking boxes. And I think until we open up the entry gateway, we're never going to get to the increased band of high people, mainly because they just look around and think either it's not for me because there aren't enough of me, or the other reality is they'll look at me without knowing me, and they'll look at some of the colleagues here and think, what have I done? What morals of mine have I compromised to get where I've got to? And so part of the rationale, going back to the way you speak, is just this. Yes, I can speak a certain way, but actually I want to just get across that. I don't need to. I shouldn't need to. People shouldn't compromise minor assets of their core being to belong at a table.
Thank you, Rizwan.
I'm back. Rizwan, you see what you just said there? That last bit you said there, that is it. That is it. You should not have to compromise those aspects of the core of who you are. You said to me when we spoke, I don't know if I missed it when I just dropped off, but you spoke about the fear of difference. I don't know if that just came out in what you recounted, but that encapsulates what Tabetha was saying about race. The fear of difference. That is the thing that needs to be broken down. Because one, we can't do our best work if we can't show up as who we really are. And why shouldn't we embrace and celebrate? Why shouldn't everyone embrace and celebrate who they are? But the fear of difference is what blocks. That is one of the biggest barriers to equity and entry, exactly what you were speaking about. So please forgive my Zoom gremlins. I have an ongoing Zoom gremlin that just shuts my mic on my laptop. I'm back on the phone. We are back in business. So Ruby.
Just to comment on that, Rizwan, because I totally agree with what you said, and it's to share a story that I've been on interview panels for many boards and kind of trustee role, board advisor roles, and often when you have a homogenous group of people that have a similar way of thinking, the in crowd, what tends to happen is when they see difference or diversity as a risk or a problem, they speak differently. He's going to challenge differently. He's going to behave, or they're going to behave differently. And that means that this doesn't fit with the culture that we've created in the board, where we, have to speak in a certain way or challenge in a certain way or tick the box. And it just made me think about how people think and what Monique said about the difference, and how difference actually is an opportunity. It's a great thing. And how do we increase people's awareness around that actually difference is not a risk. It's a benefit for your organization. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So Ruby, I'm keeping an eye on the time. I know I've got a couple of more questions for the panel from our side, but I'm also conscious of, I think we've got quite a few questions coming in from the audience, and I don't want to miss them. So can I hand over to you? And
Absolutely.
Can we take a few questions from the audience and get some of those going? And panel, I know I'm taking you back and forth, but I'm keen that one of the things that we know colleagues really want to join is to be able to put questions to you as well. So I don't want to hog it with all my planned ones. So I'll open up to Ruby. She'll direct the questions to you. If you prefer someone else would answer it, just let us know and we'll move that around. Okay, so over to you, Ruby.
Thank you, Monique. So this is a question to Tabetha and Trish. This individual is saying that they're a D&I lead and they often help their BME colleagues become a little bit more confident, but they find that despite opportunities coming up, they are very reluctant to apply. So, how do you go about, because you both mentioned how you're very supportive, and, how do you go about supporting people to just increase that confidence and really take those risks, like you said, and make those applications and take that step forward?
Do you want to go for it, Trish, and then I can support?
Yeah, okay. I think, like I've said before, you do have to keep going for it. I'd never get to a director if I did not keep going for it. It is hard to get those knockbacks, but it's part of learning. So I would really encourage them to go through the process. You can support them by going through that job, just like Tabetha says, going through the job description, look at their supporting statement, make sure that everything is as it should, to get them shortlisted, because that's often the big thing, to get shortlisted in the first place. But if they get the interview, they should go for it. If they don't get it, ask for constructive feedback so they can develop. So I would really encourage to go for those opportunities and don't be afraid, because it's a learning process in itself. Tabetha?
I would echo that. I did say it earlier, you fall 7 times and you get up the 8th time. So keep applying. You've met us here, and personally, I'm not offering 70 people one-to-one, but if you want to discuss, because I would like to understand what's stopping you. What is it that you are afraid of? And if you can deal with that, then you can apply. Is it the knockbacks that you're afraid of? Is it because there's something missing in the jobs that you're applying? How can we support you to direct you to apply for the things that you're good at, that your competencies link with everything that's specified? So I suppose I'm putting myself out there to say, if this is not enough response, get in touch. And we can have a 30-minute discussion of how we can deal with those fears. Don't be afraid. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a question here, and this can go to, they're actually asking for each panel member to give a little brief explanation, but can any of the panel members give a standout example of when a positive ally has made a change to support inclusivity and exactly what that was? An example, Rizwan, CEO, stopping him midday for Friday meetings. So can anyone give an example of that?
Yeah, I can give an example. When I was at University College London Hospital, and I will name him, Ben Morin, our Director of Workforce at the time, he was absolutely brilliant. And he was supportive in terms of, I literally had only been there about 6 months, and an organisation of 10,000 staff, I found they didn't have a network. They didn't have a Black, Asian, minority ethnic network. And I really wanted to develop something. Again, it's that sort of like, I know I need to do something different. A lot of people talk to me. I was a matron at the time, the only Black matron. So I would have a lot of people approach me with their concerns. So I knew a network was a good thing. But Ben Morin, he was fantastic. White ally, amazing. Even up to now, if I ask him for a reference, anything like that, he's like, yeah, Trish, whatever you need. So the other thing is when we talk about, and there was a question about our sponsors, and the difference in a sponsor is a person that speaks your name when you're not in the room. What I would say is they are there. They're there in the organisation. You just need to find them. So you do be brave and reach out to somebody that you probably have got a bit of a connection with, and just drop them an email and just say, look, do you mind, can we spend a bit of time? Can we have a chat? And that's how you find that sponsor. And also if you reach out to your executive board as well, they're often willing to support you. So I would look for that person in your organisation. You know who they are. They're that little bit more friendly, or they're in a meeting and they seem to listen a bit more. I would then follow up and just say, look, this is what I'm trying to do, or, you know, I want to progress my career. I see you've made it to whatever. Is there anything you can do to support me? Because if you don't ask, you don't get.
Thank you. Thank you. Just looking through the questions. Give me a minute.
I think just to thank you, straight talking there. And I'd say just from my own experience of being in the boardroom and seeing and both sides of the coin. So when I was trying to progress my own career, exactly what Trish was saying, when I worked in service improvement and I was a commissioner, and I always felt like I was bringing the bad news, or, you know, I was the one who was pushing and driving that change that there was resistance for. But looking for that person, like you said, who would nod, who would maybe just sort of say at the end, that was a good presentation, or, oh, great, like, really liked how you came at that. Asking them a bit more, oh, was there anything different I could do here? Especially for me, because I'm not from a clinical background. And I was very much working and leading change projects that were absolutely working with clinical teams and colleagues. I would always look for and ask for advice and look for that person. And sometimes what I'd also say is, I had sponsors. I didn't understand they were sponsors before, but it wasn't always necessarily very senior. So sometimes they may have been in sort of a mid to more kind of, can you say junior senior role? But do you know what I mean? They weren't always at that executive level, but they still knew and understood how to navigate and maneuver things. When I became a director, it was very easy for me to say, my door's always open, come and find me. And there would be a set of colleagues who would do that. But I'd also have colleagues who, they'll be frightened. So even though you're saying that as a director, I'm open, you're friendly, junior staff will not come and knock your door often. I used to go out to them, and I heard Trish saying that about going out. I used to go out and go and ask, what do you think? How are you getting on? How are you feeling? So for you, we all have something to offer. So I would just say, as much as there are a lot of you on the call today and you're looking for that support to progress, and I understand that, I'm not dismissing that. Don't forget that we all have something to offer. Whatever level that you are at, you will have something to offer somebody else as well. And sometimes that can be win-win for you, because that offer to someone else can sometimes open the door for you in terms of finding that person who can support you as well. So I just wouldn't forget also what you know and share. You might not think it's much, but it can unlock something to somebody else. But as seniors on the call, you may be thinking you're saying your door's open, but sometimes you have to step out the door and go and sit next to someone and ask them how you may be able to help. And the last thing I'd say there as well is, don't go for the jugular. You know, like when someone say, can you be my mentor? I need that. And you kind of load it up, and a really busy executive will go, whoa, I mostly can't do that. Sometimes, like Tabetha said, that 30-minute conversation, could I book in a call with you? Could I contact your PA? That 30-minute conversation can unlock so much for you. So I'd go there first and find out, does that answer enough for you? Or do you genuinely still need that full mentorship? Because most people can't always give you the mentorship. It's not because they don't want to hold a ladder out, they just haven't got the capacity.
So I think Rizwan and Tabetha got their hands up again.
You'll need to help me, because remember, I can't see.
I know. So Tabetha, do you want to come in?
Yeah, Tabetha was before me.
Thank you. I just wanted Ruby to just go and support in terms of like outstanding people. On top of what Monique has just highlighted, for those who are working as nurses, AHPs or midwives in the NHS, there's a program called Getting to Equity. It's led by NHS England. And I suppose in terms of like going to the first question of how I got here, that was another route. Please register on Getting to Equity, because when you're on that program, it makes all the chief nurses who are in the country nationally, if they're part of it, if their trust is part of it, they have got to become a sponsor. So that's another way of getting a sponsor. And check it out, Google it, Getting to Equity, and if you can get on it, get on that program, as well as everything that's been said.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tabetha. Rizwan, do you want to come in?
I do, thank you. I just want to flip a couple of things on the head a little bit, if I may. The first one is just to reinforce the point about I see these opportunities and I don't apply. The danger of that is you wrap yourself up into this entire thought of the world's always against me. I'm never going to get anywhere. And yet when you do see that chink, you do see a door unlocked, you don't try and open it. You literally won't get anywhere if you don't at least put yourself out there. If nothing else, you'll get constructive feedback, hopefully, of what you can improve yourself. We're all on a journey of improvement, right? No one's the finished article. And that's the other bit, which is just to follow up on what you said, Monique, mentorship support is something people offer. It's not a right for anybody. And I think, I suspect we've all had some occasions where people will just barge into your lives, demand something, assume you've got there by whatever means, and then it's it's their God-given right to take your time to do it. No, use it. Use everything as a learning opportunity, and people will want to spark off from you. Have the polite conversations, learn where you want, but also I'd go back to the point I'd made. If you're applying for stuff, if someone can see you have the ambition, the drive to do something, they're more inclined to want to support you from it. Whereas if you're invisible because you've removed yourself from those circumstances, how does anybody know that, there is somebody of talent who they want to nurture, who they want to support? And just the very last thing is, there's no law that says that mentorship support only applies to junior doctors or to band 5 nurses or to the admin staff. We all find ourselves on a journey. We all perhaps see glass ceilings at every level that you do or don't want to get through. And so, we should all look around and support at every level we're at, because who knows what aspirations or potential trajectories someone else could want to get to. And we don't assume that, hey, just because you've got to where you are, you've made it, and now your role is always to talk down it underneath. It is, I think it was Tabetha who made the point, it's incredibly lonely, and it can be very, very frustrating. Having someone who you can vent with, having someone you can share your fears with is very useful, because you know what, they're going to be the friends sometimes who find you in the dark times and G you up and just give you that, in the corner in a boxing ring to, get out there, you can do this, don't let that get you down. I go for it. And I think the more you attempt, the more people will see what you're trying to do and want to support you in it, because you know what, we've all been there. They'll recognize the struggles, and we'll still see them in ourselves. I'll take it on the chin if anyone will say, well, it's all very well saying that, but you stepped away. Yeah, you get to a point where, your family, your friends have some rights on you. Your mental well-being has some rights on you as well. You can't spend your entire life fighting. And that I sort of decided I'd got to where I'd got to within the NHS for now and within my region. And I did also think it was going to be a waste to lose a decade of that experience. And so I decided to channel it in other parts of my portfolio career, because I clearly still feel I may have something to offer. So that's the other point, is don't feel restricted because everyone else does things this way. If you've got talent, just find other ways of expressing it, and you'll be noticed at some point.
Yes, it's so true. So when we spoke, and you were saying to me, but Monique, I've stepped down from, those my senior leadership duties within my trust. And I said, I want you on even more, Rizwan, because actually I want here, bravery in the boardroom is about being honest. It's not to put people off. It's about being honest. And exactly what you were saying there, Rizwan, one of the things that I think is important for colleagues here to take in on the call is about building your support toolbox. You've heard me talk before, I mentioned this a lot. Building your support toolbox. What are some of those support tools that will benefit you and will help you to be in there? Yes, you've heard of some of the more traditional ones, coaching, mentoring, support. What Rizwan was talking about there is about building your network, building your safe spaces, isn't it? Building your trusted advisors, who you can go to when it's tough, and you need that. And you will need that as a senior leader. Even when you are in the majority, even when it's great, senior leadership in the NHS is tough. Even when the going is good. I stepped away from it. I was in the boardroom for 5 years. I believe, from what I've been told, I did well at my job, but I was tired. I was tired. I was tired of having a phone stuck to my ear 24/7 and juggling my 3 kids. And I led strategy and transformation. I felt my role was I had to have energy for everyone. I had to have that energy to say, We can push this change boulder up the hill. We can do it again. You know, we can move it forward. When you are a change agent, you usually bring that energy, you bring that innovation, you bring that, yes, we can. My tank was empty. My tank was empty. So even though my tools had helped me along the way, and they absolutely helped me to stay there and to grow and to manage and to try my best to show up as me, you know, I was tired. So 10 years at Rizwan, I take my hat off to you. Take my hat off to you, because that's no mean feat. And to then be brave enough to say, actually, I'm going to step into a new arena now. I'm going to use what I've learned and share that so that it's not as tough for others coming behind me. But I'm also going to I'm still going to stay in leadership roles and add value. And I think, you know, you've inspired me. All of you have inspired me, but that inspires me to say, like, yes, you may end one journey, but you can open the door and start another. Listen to what Tabetha shared with us about how long you were at your trust in Derbyshire, Tabetha. And actually that didn't let that dampen your spirit. You didn't let that dampen your ambition. So the conversation here and the risk Trish took all the time, it's not doom and gloom. I want this to be this is a real conversation. It's so your eyes are open. You're learning about what can be in your support toolbox. I hope you feel encouraged by the bravery that you've heard today. And I'm not hearing our panel guests saying, look at me, I'm so brave. They're explaining to us very clearly how that bravery and courage and knowledge and experience and insight has built up and where they've gone to in the depths of themselves to be brave enough to challenge. So I just want to pull some of that out in terms of what we're hearing. There's so many gems in what we're hearing today. But the magic of that, you know, you do have choices. We all have talent. But actually, we've also got to take some of that on ourselves and move it. And we use our collective power and energy here. This is the other thing about the movement. And I know Sam's on the call today as well. Me and Sam founded this movement because we knew that we needed collective energy to challenge and pull down the big systemic barriers. The barriers that we're talking about, some of them are systemic, they're long-standing, they're deep-rooted. We have to come together to address them. It's hard for people to do it on their own and you get tired. Yeah, so it's those two bits of energy and understanding and learning for yourself, but also we come together as a collective movement to try and support each other to pull down those systemic barriers. Yeah, I really want that to be a key takeaway from what we hear today. So I'll get off my soapbox now, all right? So Ruby, do you have any more questions?
No, it's just a comment also on a theme that I've noticed come up here as well, is that space to really reflect on what you're doing. So every single one of you mentioned, you know, taking a step back and thinking about what you said or what you did or how you did it. And I think often when we're in working in the NHS and these types of roles, you're so busy, you're flying off your seat all the time. It's really important to balance that well-being and that time to reflect on that journey. So I just wanted to point that out. I have a question, if you don't mind. So my question is about this wonderful thing called imposter syndrome that creeps into your head and tells you you're not going to be great at that. You're not going to do it. You know, you're not doing this. And all of that, especially when we see that there's a lack of representation. So there's a certain conditioning that then happens that I'm not going to break the ceiling. I'm not going to get to those roles. How do you deal with that and balance that self-critique of yourself versus, you know, developing and that kind of journey to progress forward? And I don't mind whoever answers that question.
I'll give it a go.
Go for it. Thank you.
You're reminding me of my Bevan days, imposter syndrome. Some of it is not because you've imposed it on yourself. Some of it is being told constantly, you're not good enough in these jobs. Some of it is applying. You know, when you're applying, you're falling, you're not getting it, you're not getting it. Confidence dies down and you think, I can't do it, I can't apply, I'm not doing this anymore. So some of the imposter syndrome is supported and developed systematically by the institutional racism that's there, that discriminates, that makes you lose your confidence and you lose yourself because you start then doubting yourself. Where you can deal with imposter syndrome, where I did, was looking at, actually, I am good enough. And that takes a lot. It really takes a lot, because racial trauma is not easy to deal with. So it's taking back, reflecting, and actually looking and telling yourself you're good enough. Having your networks telling you you're good enough. It needs a lot of self-belief, self-confidence, and then supported by those networks and the coaching and the sponsors and everything that we've said to get you back to actually, I can do it. And you can, everybody can, because the imposter syndrome sometimes is imposed by other people.
Thank you,
I
Tabetha.
couldn't agree more with that. And I just want to weave in the question Sam asked earlier as well, if you don't mind, about anyone or any event who perhaps unlocked doors for you. And it would be wrong for me not to join this and call out the one person who I blame for unleashing me onto the world and onto you lot, which is my friend and colleague Rachel Dunscombe, because she was the one she was CIO at Bolton, who I started to have conversations with, and she saw this medic who was a bit of a geek, who enjoyed stuff, and empowered me to do stuff where other people really wouldn't. And that I'm tying this back to this whole point of imposter syndrome, because you know what you do? You wrap yourself up into, maybe I'm overthinking myself, maybe I'm thinking too much of myself, especially if I'm not going anywhere. And then, it's the whole, going back to the language thing, right? Is me speaking up for myself arrogance, whereas in others, with less melanin in their skin, it's an empowering thing, right? The confident man, whereas it will just be the mouthy so-and-so. And you wrap yourself up into this, and you always spend, I wasted so much effort trying to prove, as I said earlier, trying to prove to the world that I was good enough, not even as good as anyone else thought I was, just good enough, whatever enough meant. And when people like Rachel and others support you, you then think, yeah, it's because you're a nice person. That's why you're saying nice things. But eventually, when you're at the table at someone's invitation enough, then and when they go out of their way to support you, you do start thinking, maybe I do belong here. Maybe it is all right. And what was interesting was, again, I go back to my CEO, and we used to catch up every 2 months. And so she said to me about a year or so ago, something's changed in you. I went, what? She goes, it doesn't look like you're seeking our validation anymore. And she was right. I think because I'd had enough of trying to always prove myself to these groups of people. And ironically, it's perhaps where I decided I've had enough of all this. Thanks very much. I'll, forge my own path. It was incredibly liberating, but getting to that point took a very, very long time, and you can't do it without people around you just to speak over the demons in your own head. I would still say I probably have some imposter syndrome. I still wonder, could I do this? Could I do that? I suspect if it goes away completely, you probably do tip yourself over into arrogance, and that keeps us in check a little bit.
Yeah. I definitely hear that, and I think speaking about imposterism, speaking about self-doubt, speaking about fears, it's important that we do that, and it's important as leaders we do that. The thing that I would also just connect to that as well is, we're talking a lot, of course we are, about leadership and progressing into senior leadership roles. What I also hear from my colleagues here is about the values you embody as leaders. And let's not forget that we are here to also support people to be brave, inclusive leaders, to lead in the right way. And that's what I heard there from you. So being honest about the doubts that we may still have. You guys don't even want to see me before we click start on these webinars, but I don't really like being in the limelight, but I'm determined to build a movement. And I know I have to be in the space, and you have to take certain conversations forward. But actually being able to do it afraid, or being able to voice that still happens to me, is important, because sometimes colleagues aren't stepping forward because they think, oh, until you get rid of those feelings, that's when you're ready. And Tabetha, I had a question for you. I know on our list, and I just wanted to ask it here, if I may. Do you think there's anything in particular that told you were really ready for a board member, an exec board member role? Was there anything when you were pushing and progressing your career that you felt, that's when I knew I was really ready?
That's a difficult one, Monique, because you never know whether you're ready until you're in there. I suppose years of experience and everything that you've done, you start asking, what is it that I need to be a board member? But until you are in the boardroom, and this is where it falls as well, I'm going to be confident in the boardroom sometimes takes shadowing, acting into it, because until you sit in the boardroom, you never know whether you are ready or whether you're not. I know it may not answer your question, but that's a fact. Because to experience boardroom, you have to be sitting in it. And you do start as a wobbly executive director, and then the confidence comes with like the discussions we're having now. But you don't know until I think when you are in the boardroom. But there's certain things you have to work to get yourself ready. Understanding how board works. You have to understand what's a unitary board, what is strategy, what is performance. And I thought I understood those things, and I do. So the things you can work to, but to understand whether you're ready, you have to be sitting in the space.
Thank you. And I agree. I think the thing to connect to this as well is I mentioned at the beginning, I think I said it, where I wanted to particularly focus on senior clinical leadership today, because we've been blessed with a number of fantastic panel guests over the sessions that we've held. But I'm also very keen to see, whilst we are seeing chief medical officers, we're seeing more diversity in those roles. We're seeing more diversity in chief people officers as well. But I was keen to hear more from our nursing colleagues who haven't switched code, if I say it that way. We've had nursing colleagues who've switched to strategy, who've switched to other areas. And also hearing like what Rizwan was sharing about where you can take your senior leadership and how you can bring that still into the private healthcare space as well. So I wanted for people to hear from yourselves as clinicians in senior roles, because we've either heard from clinicians who've switched codes, or we haven't had the privilege of having clinical colleagues here and sharing it. Trish, I think I can squeeze one more question in. I know, Trish, you were at Northern Care Alliance, and for those of you who aren't aware, it's one of the biggest trusts in the NHS, has a Black male CEO and also has a Black chief nursing officer. And I just wanted to ask you, Trish, from your experience of being a director of nursing there, what difference did it make to have a more diversified board and having the most senior roles in the organisation held by Black colleagues?
Yeah, I think it's picking up on what Rizwan has said before about that diversity of boards and diversity of thought. I think that's what it brings. I mean, it is helpful that, the chief nurse and the chief exec there are amazing, and people of colour as well. I mean, that's absolutely brilliant. But I think, again, and I've seen some of the questions, it's how you bring your true authentic self and that you're not afraid. And somebody I did see on the call had just said, oh, how do you speak? I'm not very eloquent. The more you ask questions, you'll get more eloquent. You will feel nervous sometimes and your voice is a bit shaky, but you put your hands up and you make that point. And that's what I do in that space. That's what I did at the Northern Care Alliance. I brought that, for example, I tend to start, just a bit of a tip, I'll start with a bit of a story. So I'll just come in, if we're talking about maternal health, for example, not that I've got responsibility for maternity, I said, well, if you look like me, you're 4 times more likely to die in pregnancy. If you look like me, and that absolutely shocks the audience. So that's something about knowing, keeping yourself up to date with what is going on and thinking about some of those issues that we're seeing, those inequalities and health at a start. You start with that story and those ears automatic prick up. And so then once you start with that, then you say, right, okay, what do you suggest? What are we doing? Are we ensuring that we're doing that? I think the other thing we also need to know, and you'll realise as you ride through your career, These are statutory duties as well. So it's not a nice do and a can do, or we will do a bit of EDI. The H Trust have got a statutory responsibility. So what I would say is go away, understand. I read the Health Service Journal articles, see if your organisation can get you subscription because it's expensive. I know all of the stories. I know who's got CQC outstanding, inadequate. It's getting that knowledge behind. So when you do talk, you've got that knowledge and intelligence that comes behind it, and that gives you that credibility. And the only final thing to say is that really important lift as we climb, because what helps build your credibility and your confidence is I've got to where I am. How am I helping somebody else? If there's 70 people on this call, how are you helping another 70 people? How are another 70 people helping another 70 people? Your impact, continue to empower. That will help you imposter syndrome, because your how you are as a person will be spread across the network by the reputation. They say, well, I went to Trish and she did this. I went to Trish and she helped me. So you're already, and then they're thinking, oh, who's this Trish Hughes? Who's this Tabetha? Who's this Rizwan? So by helping others, it will help you, and there's always something that you can share. So I think that's the thing for me. And only just to pick up, I mean, again, like Tabetha said, I'm really happy for us to do maybe we could just, Tabetha and I could do a little mini half an hour, little webinar, and more of an open session for you, and that will help cover a lot of the questions and concerns, and we can point you in the right direction. But we can speak to Monique about that. That's something, we'll be willing to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and take some of these conversations forward. Okay, thanks all.
Thank you. Rizwan, I can give you 30 seconds before I need to run us down and land the plane.
I'll be quick. It was just the very last thing Patricia said, and to be crude about it, if you don't mind. On the one hand, we complain about the strictures and not being given opportunities. Well, then we should create opportunities and create them amongst ourselves as well, exactly in the way you've said, Trish. Look around you, and when you see an avenue for someone, put the name forward, talk about them, get them talked about, because it's the whole thing. If you are going to stand in a room and talk about colleagues, then they're more inclined to want to talk about you when you're not in the room. And maybe by this cascade effect, we'll break through some of these strictures and barriers.
Thank you, Rizwan. That's a great point to end on as well. What is it? Remember, our strapline is what is it we can all do to help turn this out now? And I think that's brilliant. And thank you to everyone who has interacted in the chat. It's been, as ever, a brilliant and insightful conversation, and people supporting, connecting, and interacting on the chat as well. Just before we finish up, we've got 4 minutes. Millie, can I come back to the slides? We've got a couple of things just to tell you before we close off. I should also say, everyone, as I said, bear with us. We will also send you the recording of this session. It will come through to you because you've registered. But as I always say, there's action for us all. So what you've heard today, I'd just like you to have this takeaway action. What are you going to start, stop, or continue doing to help turn the dial now? Our panel's been absolutely fantastic. They've shared so much insights, advice, and instruction with you here today. And I think you could pick, there's a range of actions you could pick from there in what they've advised and guided you to do. So what are you going to start, stop, or continue doing to help turn the dial now? And Millie, if we could swipe to the next slide. Okay, so I mentioned at the very beginning, we have launched Bravery in the Boardroom podcast, #BITB podcast. It's a little bit of a mouthful. But what you've also told us from previous sessions is that you absolutely love the interaction with the panel. You can see, though, we never ever have enough time. So what you told us is that you wanted to hear more from a range of leaders who are driving and change and looking to tackle inequalities. How are they doing that? Both from an allyship and change perspective, but also from hearing from our colleagues from ethnically diverse backgrounds and from other protected characteristics too. So if you tune into our YouTube channel, you will be able to access the podcast there. It's also on all good podcast platforms. I think that's how you say it, that you can find it there as well. And we've got a great episode about to come out now with Marimutu Kumarasamy. Colleagues may know him as Kumar. He's the Deputy Coup at Birmingham and Solihull Trust. I had a fantastic conversation with Kumar, so we're hoping to release that episode later on this week. I think we've got 2 more slides, Millie. We have a website. So If you don't want to trawl through the YouTube channel, do hit our website. Liam is posting links in the chat now for you. You can access recordings of all our previous webinars. We're also going to start building the platform out. So again, learning from the insights that have been shared in these sessions, we're going to be starting to release some of the offers of support that we will have available coming through in 2024. We're also going to be going on the collab journey. So you're going to be seeing Bravery in the Boardroom collabing with a number of different organizations and movements, so that, like I said, we are coming collectively together to challenge the barriers and pull them down. So I'm going to be at the APNA NHS conference on the 15th of September. We're going to be running a live Bravery in the Boardroom panel session there as well. Also look out for me. I'll be doing I hope it's going to be in person, actually, another in person. We're going to be collaborating with the Race Code run by Carl George. And again, we're going to have a special panel for Black History Month. So look out for that too. We'll share more information as soon as we get there. I think we have one more slide, Millie, if I'm right. If you do want to post, so if today anything has resonated with you, we always love to hear your gems. What were your top takeaways? What are some of the things you're taking away from here? As I said, I hope the main message is there are two sides of the coin. What we can do to help ourselves, but also where we need the colleagues in the majority and others to help us and move the dial forward. So whatever you took away from here today, please use the hashtag #WeAreBrave and connect with us. As I said, I forgot we're on Insta as well, so because I'm not on Insta. So we are on Insta as well. So please do post, do connect and follow with us. It will be great. And I think our last slide is to say, thank you so much. Thank you all for your time. Thank you for your contribution. And thank you for what you're doing, wherever you are and wherever you're doing. What you're doing makes a difference. It really does. So a big thank you to our panel. You know, thank you for your contribution, your honesty, and your inspiration is what I would say as well. Thank you to Ruby, Millie, and Liam as well for making sure we run smoothly. And I look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care, and thank you so much for being here. And I think we are done. So we will close the webinar. Panel guests, I will drop you a message in the WhatsApp. All right. So take care, everybody. Thank you. See you later.
Pleasure meeting you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.